Okay, we're back again, and I'm going to read a little bit more out of Parmenides, and we'll just call this Parmenides 2, and then talk about it a little bit more. Therefore, the one has nothing to do with time and does not occupy any stretch of time. Again, the word was become, was becoming, are understood to mean connection with past time, will be becoming, will become, with future time, is and is becoming with time now present. Consequently, if the one has nothing to do with any time, it never has become, nor was becoming, or was, nor can you say it has become now, or is becoming, or is, or that it will be becoming, or will become, or will be in the future. Now a thing can have being only in one of these ways. There is, accordingly, no way in which the one has being. Therefore, the one in no sense is. It cannot then be, even to the extent of being one, for then it would be a thing that is and has being. Rather, if we can trust such an argument as this, it appears that the one neither is one nor is at all. And if a thing is not, you cannot say that it has anything or that there is anything of it. Consequently, it cannot have a name or be spoken of, nor can there be any knowledge or perception or opinion of it. It is not named or spoken of, not an object of opinion or of knowledge, not perceived by any creature. Okay, so again, all of the reality that we experience is within space and time. It started at the Big Bang, and everything was discrete since that point. Chopped up experiences, events, and that's the reality that we live in. And these are these parts that Parmenides is talking about. And he says that that can deceive us, and that is not really the true nature of ultimate being. Because those discrete parts are limited, they can perish, they have extensions, so they have beginning and ends, and that true being is eternal and boundless, extensionless, and cannot be described by a mind or by words, because all of those are limits. In the world that we live in, we live in the cinematic world. The way you make a movie is with still shots, and you have still shot 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you create the movie by moving those very quickly, and it appears to make motion. And so, as crazy as this is, at the foundation of our space-time reality, you have these motionless events that have occurred throughout history and that create up our space-time reality, the world that we live in. And very similar to Zeno's arrow paradox, how can an arrow at any one point given time be motionless within it? So how can something that's motionless at its foundation have motion? And this is a big paradox, and I think a lot of this goes along with what Julian Barber talked about in his End of Time, in that at our foundation of the reality, our space-time, are these motionless events. And that's really interesting. It talks into determinism and free will, and that's all just very hard to grasp and contemplate. But all of that is discrete and has extension to it. Julian Barber would actually argue that those are extensionless, eternal events that exist in some kind of an eternal, godlike mind. this qualia, there's this experience out there. I think he would argue that. But Parmenides talks about ultimate being not being like that, not being relevant to the actual world that we're living in for this 80 years, which is such a small blip in the eternity of all of time. It's really a nothing, insignificance. He would talk about this one immutable, unchanging, extensionless, eternal state of being that had to always be, and that this talk about something being and not being, and that there can only be being in this eternal being. So this also gets into like a talk about the eternal truth, ultimate truth of the universe, and is there an ultimate truth, or what is the ultimate answer to all of existence? And you have Heraclitus, who talks about change as the only thing that is constant. And that's a paradox, play on words as well, in that there's this elusiveness to the world that we're living in, that there's this eternal change. And Parmenides is the opposite of that. And he would say at the very foundation is this one truth, and that it's this extensionless, unchanging foundation at the very bottom. So it's again this guess that philosophers and people have at what is the ultimate meaning to the universe and so forth. But again, this talk about the mind being part of Parmenides' ultimate, immutable, unchanging reality, I don't know if that's really the case, because I think it has to be some kind of an eternal self, eternal being that doesn't include the mind, because the mind includes concepts such as space and time and photons and discreteness and all this chopping up of the world, this limitedness, so that we can understand it. Our limited minds can understand it, and we can understand these small parts of ultimate reality. But that's not what Parmenides is talking about. He's talking about truth about everything, which is this infinite, unbounded, unlimited state of being. So I don't think, again, as I stated in the first video, I don't necessarily think that it's going to include, or does include, the mind in what Parmenides is ultimately talking about, that it is somehow this eternal soul, our eternal essence is somehow what is at this ultimate foundation, and it doesn't necessarily include a limited mind.